we as humans, all of us are aware at some level, as you move up the awareness chain. We talked about condition white, which is just, you're at home, you're not worried about anything. You've got your alarms on, you're with your family, it's a nice neighborhood, stuff like that. So you're next level up though from down here. And then you see people in the street with their cell phones. They're not at home, so they should have a little bit higher level of awareness, but they're walking into walls and stepping into pools of water and things like that, because that, even though there is some awareness, the awareness is very limited.
Welcome to another episode of Liberating Humanity. I'm Paul Hutchinson, and we had so many people who loved that interview with Steve, and we're super excited to share more great information on how you can use situational awareness to keep you and your family safe, to take your whole life to a whole new level. For you guys that didn't see the other episode, Steve Tarani is literally one of the best of the best of the best in situational awareness and edge weapons training, so many of the things that we use when we're undercover, when we're finding the kids, things that we can do to keep ourselves safe and our teams as well. So you as families, you as parents can learn so much information from these podcasts on things that are very tangible tools that you can use to keep you and your family safe. We're going to go beyond that today. We're going to talk about how this level of awareness can not only serve in physical protection, but this level of awareness can literally help raise global consciousness. It can help us become better people as a whole. And that's really what Liberating Humanity is all about. It's about being the very best version of ourselves. It's about releasing those things in our life that don't serve us anymore. It's about not living in fear, not dealing with all this anger, releasing those things from our childhood that don't serve us, getting rid of anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, all of these things, and coming to a closer relationship with God. So super excited today to share some more time with my dear friend and one of the best trainers I have ever learned from, Mr. Steve Tarani. Thank you for joining us.
Paul, thanks for having me on today.
So we talked briefly the other time about how, when I watched that first Jason Bourne movie, how when he very first, when we're trying to figure out who this character is, and he goes into this restaurant and he's trying to figure out who he is. He doesn't remember his training. He doesn't remember anything. And what made him the most powerful secret weapon for the government was this unbelievable level of awareness of everything. They had trained him in a way where he could be aware of every situation, and it made him very effective. Now, yes, he knew how to handle himself from a hard tactical training standpoint, but most of that training was the 6 inches between your ears. In fact, people ask me all the time, hey, as I'm investing in things, what's the most valuable thing that I can invest in? And I tell them one of my mentors told me years ago that the most valuable piece of real estate you will ever own is the 6 inches between your ears. And so that's what our goal is today, is to give people some valuable information that they can use to elevate their life as a whole, as well as keep their family safe in a somewhat dangerous world. Why don't you tell me just some basics of becoming a Jason Bourne? Okay, how do I when I walk into a room, what are some of the things that would be valuable, some tools of that 6 inches between our ears that would be super valuable to know?
I like to call it your most powerful weapon. In fact, I've written 11 books, and that's one of my books, is Your Most Powerful Weapon. And it's your awareness. It's your mind that is able to, well, first of all, you don't need any bullets for it. It doesn't run out of batteries. You don't need a permit. It's with you. It's on 24/7. And to be able to develop that tool, your mind, so that it can be used by you to accomplish certain tasks. So let's say, for example, you want to be aware of what's going on around you in a room or in a parking lot or whatever. You have multiple inputs. You have your visual, you have audio, you have sensory, smell. You could smell gasoline or something's burning, something like that. So using all your senses is one way to bring in information, and good information. I use the term relevant information to your situation. So visual is only one of it. But as this information comes in, the more relevant it is, the better choices you can make based on the information that you're processing.
So on that same note, you've got, Jason Bourne's there in the room. He's in the restaurant, and he knows where the exits are. He knows how to handle things if a threat escalated, et cetera. And so let's talk a little bit about what you call threat progression, right? And how to identify the different levels and what to do at each level of progression of that threat.
Sure thing. So all threats don't just suddenly appear. They start from somewhere, and then there's this cascading series of events which lead to potentially physical violence. Everything begins as a potential threat. So, for example, we talked about the UDA cycle, OODA. It stands for...
Like that UDA Loop thing? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's observe, orient, decide, act. So, someone comes in, just think about you're going to a restaurant. You observe the restaurant, and then you orient, the chair's there, the table's there, the front door's there, that kind of thing. And then you decide, I'm going to sit in that chair. And then what do? You act. You sit in that chair. Observe, orient, decide, act. So that cycle, we as humans always follow cycles, whether it's the changing of the seasons or day turns into night. When you're born, every one of us needed a bottle and a diaper change, So none of us are exempt from those cycles. Neither are the bad guys. And we can use those cycles as a tool. And we talked about developing your awareness as one of those tools. So the observe, orient, decide, act, a potential threat may go through that same cycle looking at you or your family, and they may observe you. They may orient, they don't seem to be very aware. They're exhibiting certain soft target indicators, and then they make a decision. That's the person. So they go from, meaning you as a victim, they go from being a potential threat. The split second they make that decision, they become an actual threat. Now, you can't read their mind. You don't know that they're a potential threat. So the next level up in that progression is a display of what we would call pre-attack indicators, meaning that they're checking you out. They're maybe moving towards you. They may say something, hey, can you give me, what time it is, that kind of thing. And then lastly, the fourth and final piece of the progression of any threat is the actual attack itself. So you've got a potential threat using the UDA cycle, converts to an actual threat, exhibits pre-attack behavior, and then finally attack behavior. You can spot the pre-attack behavior ahead of time before it turns into the attack. That is a threat progression.
And I've seen the UDA Loop system. If you can interfere with that UDA Loop in some way on the way through, it can help you tremendously. In fact, I had one of my trainers was talking about. I wasn't in this training, but he was teaching us how he aced this part of this one training. They were in a bus. The bad guy was at the front. The bad guy had a gun, and you're at the back of the bus. There's other passengers and stuff that are there. You've got to figure out how to get through that little teeny alley of the space between the seats all the way up to the front before he shoots you. You don't have the ability to go around or whatever else. You've got to figure out how to get there before he decides to pull the trigger and shoot you. So somehow you have to interrupt that UDA loop to be able to do so. Everybody else, whatever they tried, hiding between seats and whatnot, boom, they were dead. They were dead. No, nothing worked. So what Joseph did, he quietly pulled off his shoe and kind of held it down. He was sitting in the seat. And what he did is he came up and he, boom, threw the shoe right at the attacker. So now this flying shoe through the air interrupts his UDA loop, the attacker. And he comes back like that. Now, you can run quickly when you have a decision to do so. So the second that shoe left his hand, Joseph was running full speed up. And by the time the attacker reset his OODA loop and dealt with that shoe that was coming at his face, Joseph was already on the gun and was able to disarm it and pass that test. So,
may I go into technical detail of what happened?
Absolutely.
So,
please do.
Using the UDA cycle as a tool. So, for example, you have, we use the term bad guy and good guy. Just so in any altercation, no matter what it is, and no matter how many good guys or bad guys, the bad guy always has the initiative in any altercation because they are the ones who decide where it's going to happen, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what weapons are going to be used, who's going to get hurt or killed. They bring that to the fight, so they have the initiative. The objective of the good guy is to take that initiative away from the bad guy. And you do it by, as you said, getting inside his loop. How does that work? So let's start with the bad guy. Bad guy runs his OODA loop. He observes you. He orients you, kind of like we were talking about before. Well, it's one guy. He's sitting by himself. I don't know why he has a shoe in his hand. Then he makes a decision. I'm going to shoot this guy. And in the process of the A where he acts, he's about to execute the action he decided he was going to do. Now the OODA loop goes to the good guy. Good guy observes the bad guy. Then he orients to the bad guy. I'm a certain distance away. Bad guy has a gun. I've made a decision. I don't want to get shot. And now I'm going to act. So he takes off his shoe, throws the shoe at the bad guy. The bad guy now reruns his OODA loop. He has to reobserve and reorient. Oh, there's a shoe in the air. Then he has to redecide. And my favorite of the switching of the OODA loop is he has to react. The split second you can make them react to you, you just move to the front of the action-reaction power curve. So the answer is how you get inside their loop is make them react to you.
That's perfect. Perfect. Yeah. And you know, I always teach our guys that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? Okay. And what happens, these bad guys usually don't have plan B, C, D. They're not trained like the rest of us. All right, they're single-minded. I'm going to go in. I'm going to point my gun. They're going to give me all my money. I'm out of here. That's about the mindset of most of them. And if you've got, okay, I've got plan A, I've got plan B, plan C, plan D. If this goes this way, I'm going to do this. I love my former partner, John Pennington, as we were building Bridge Investment, we were building the fund. I like to tell people, John plays chess like 6 or 7 moves ahead, right? He thinks, okay, I'm going to move here, he's going to do that, or he's going to do that. One of those two things, and I'm going to do here and here. That's how you win in chess, is you're not thinking the move that you're doing. You're thinking a few different moves ahead. And it's the same thing when we're in business and stuff. He was actively thinking through any potential situation before it ever happened so that we could protect ourselves from it, which ended up building a multi-billion-dollar fund because of the same tools that we're talking about here, right? It's that pre-planning, it's seeing things in advance, and it's making sure that we have everything set up in the right place so we can deal with the bad guys in that situation. The bad guys in that situation might be the ones who are trying to defraud us or our investors, trying to steal from the funds, all of these things. Those are all things that we needed to mitigate against before they ever happened, right? And so these are ways that all of your tools can be used in the corporate world, in the family world, in the spiritual world. All of these things, it's not just in dealing with guys who want to take our life or take our money or take our virtue, whatever. It can be applied in every area of life.
And let me expand more on that. So you made a good point about the chess, right? So the OODA cycle can also be used as a tool. Not only is it looking 3 moves ahead, you can also identify patterns. Oh, I've recognized this pattern when they move, the bishop over here, the rook is exposed. I recognize that pattern. The OODA loop's the same way. It shows you the pattern. He has to go through observe, then orient, then decide. You can't go from observe to act. They must follow the cycle. And that's Mother Nature's way of keeping us bound to those cycles.
Yeah. And it's you understand that now you could use it to your advantage. You understand yourself. Hey, I need to make those decisions and change. It's like when we were training on dealing with a threat of a gun. I'm not racing the bullet. There's no way I can out maneuver a bullet. What I'm racing is his OODA loop, right? I'm racing his ability to observe whatever I'm going to do next and make moves to pull that trigger and shoot me, right? That's what I have. That's what I'm out racing. And I guarantee that from my hands in this situation, if he's within 3 feet, I can control that weapon, move out of the line of fire, get it to a place where it's not going to fire again, control it, and remove it from him before his OODA loop takes over and makes another decision, pull the trigger, right? And so a lot of these things, if we do end up in that situation where we do have to end up in force on force, understanding how that decision-making process works is super important, and how to disrupt it. Just like we did with the shoe on the bus, just like we do with the gun. All of these things is disrupting that cycle so that we can gain the advantage. And gaining the advantage is making him react, as you said. Once we make him react, then we're in control. It's kind of like in business and sales. I teach our guys, I said that the person asking the questions controls the conversation, right? You want to control it. You ask the right question, and you don't just do a yes or no one. You do something that's open-ended. You learn more, and you follow up from there. In the sales cycle, as you're helping them see the value of what you have, that what you're presenting to them, it's all a matter of simply asking the right questions. In a date, when you're getting to know a young girl, you have, okay, these questions, I'm going to learn more about her family. And again, it's that control of that conversation is asking the questions. Now, if they want to ask them, of course, you can answer those and be engaging, but then ask again. In fact, I used to have some of the guys at the office I would not take with me on a sales call because they didn't understand that process. They didn't see where we were taking it. This is why Jimmy and I were so effective undercover, is that both of us understood this process of where we were leading the traffickers, right? The right questions to ask to take them to the next thing. They were reacting. We were in control. We were in control of our environment, where we were meeting them. We were in control of the questions that were being asked. All the way along, we were maintaining that level of control. And if they ever passed up that, in the situation where I was in the Black Alley I talked about with our other one, those guys, I maintain a level of posture that's just above. And whenever they pass it, I don't just go barely over it. I go boom right up here. Why? Because I have to reset the fact that I'm in the control of the situation, not them. And they need to know where my confidence level was so that we weren't an easy soft target. You talk in your books about denying opportunity, and you have some different things. Explain what denying opportunity means and how we can apply that in our life.
So in criminal law, it means motive and opportunity, right? So that's what the bad guy to commit a crime. Nothing you can do about the means or the motive, but you can deny them their opportunity. And one of the methods is to de-escalate the situation. So, for example, you watch two people that are having a conversation, and the conversation gets heated, and it starts to, it can go from a heated conversation to fisticuffs pretty quick. So give me some examples of what you would do to de-escalate that conversation. What are some things you could do?
I've had situations like that before where, two friends are getting heated on something, and the goal is to get them off of this ego trip that they have with each other, right? And I might say, hey guys, let's agree to disagree here. Do you remember that game last night? Was that freaking awesome? I might completely go off the rail of the conversation to not be discussing something that's so triggering for both of those people. In fact, we have a lot of law enforcement have different simulated training systems of de-escalation or escalation. We have this 360-degree video thing with videos on all sides where you're in there. You've got a fake gun, but it's tied to the system as a whole. And every situation you have to decide, is this something that I can talk them down, or is this something that's a real threat? For example, I remember one where we're going in and I'm we're breaching a house. This guy was a domestic violence situation, and there was this big guy, and he's got his hands up. He's coming through the doorway. You're thinking, hey, this is okay and we're good. But what you don't, if you're not paying attention, his hand goes up just a little bit higher above the door frame where he's got a gun there, right? Now you've got to deal with it. But in most, I remember I did some training. We had a bunch of Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and I was standing in the middle of this room. I have a black hood over my head. It's got a pulley on the ceiling, right? And there's a black hood over my head, and I'm just listening. I'm trying to figure out what's all going on. And then they pull off the hood, and immediately you have to decide if this guy running towards me is just a jogger, right? If this guy approaching me with his hands like this, if he's just there asking some questions, or if there's a knife in his hand, if there's a bat there, whatever else. So reading that situation and then being able to effectively de-escalate it with the right words if necessary, or take it up from an escalation standpoint. So
very good. Exactly. Simple things like lowering your voice or showing the palms of your hands, little things like that can help to de-escalate the scenario. Another option is to deter, denying the opportunity for, let's say, they want to steal your car. And in your car, you have your wallet that's wide open. You're in the restaurant, your wallet's open, there's cash all over the place, a gold ring and some other stuff. Of course, the bad guy's going to look and go, wow, all I have to do is break a window and get that. So deterrence would be, there's your car is sterile. There's nothing in there. So they'll look in and they're deterred because it's just like your home, you have locks, alarms, that kind of stuff. So it's a deterrence.
That's perfect. My wife gets mad at me sometimes because she's like, you miss the undercover days, don't you? I said, why is that? She said, because you just took all that cash out of the ATM and you were like counting it in front of people while you're going. I said, maybe. Yes, that's what you don't do, right? That's not.
Yeah, get up in the morning, open every door and window in your house and put $100 bills.
Exactly.
So you've got your de-escalate, deter, and then the last word is defuse. So diffusing a situation. One of the best examples is some years ago, there was an elementary school just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And there was a lady named Antoinette Tufts, and she was the administrator at the school. That guy comes in with a rifle and puts 2 rounds into the foyer and turns the rifle towards the kids. So that situation was already, the fuse was already lit. So how she defused it was using verbal judo. She literally talked the guy down to placing the gun on her desk, and she solved the problem by defusing the situation.
So what are some examples of just things that parents can say or do to diffuse a situation? You talked about having the lowered voice and whatnot, but what are some actionable things they can?
So let's hey, how about that game? It's deflection, deterrence, that kind of stuff. So defuse, deter, and de-escalate. Those are the general. And the number one thing, the universal solvent is communication. You have to be in communication with your kids, because if you don't have that, you're never going to be able to observe what's going on. So that's number one in my book is establishing that communication. And the second thing is trust. They got to know that you're on their side. They have to know that you're on their side, and you're shoulder to shoulder with them looking at this situation. So communication number one, trust right up there. I guess they're both number one. And then to be able to see, to observe, have your awareness at a high enough level where you can observe, well, this is what they're trying to tell me. Because they can be telling you something, but you're not aware, that kind of thing. So communication, trust, and awareness.
I don't know how well this fits, but it just kind of came to mind. I remember years ago, I was, when I very first started with Attacking Anxiety and Depression Company, we had an infomercial that instead of charging the full $300, we just the price of shipping And this tripled the number of people that called in. But unfortunately, the very thing that they were fighting, their anxiety itself, prevented them from using the program. And our sales tripled, but our returns 30 days later went through the roof as well. And then, so we had to figure out how to deal with this person with anxiety who wanted to give us back our program, right? And so the typical call center that was handling it in the beginning was just saying, hey, you know, what if we just discount it and whatever else? And they were still, no, it's not working for me. And so what I taught our sales guys is I said, imagine yourself on a football field. You're a 130-pound scrawny guy, and you've got a 250-pound linebacker on the other side. He's the customer. He's going that way whether you like it or not, right? You don't have a chance in hitting him head on. You can't do that. Instead, imagine yourself going on his side of the scrimmage line and looking the same direction as him, and then slowly moving him the other direction. You know, saying, hey, you know what? Look at the guys in the stand up there. Look at that. Wow, beautiful cheerleaders. You know, we'll go over there and, hey, why don't we walk and go get some drinks this way? You know, and we take the ball the other. That kind of a mindset. Now, how did it work when it came to handling the program that was being returned? Is we would say, you know what? I understand. The feel, felt, found type thing. I understand how you're feeling right now. You're having some anxiety about this thing, and that's the very reason why you got it in the first place. In fact, it's totally fine that you return this, no problem at all. But what I want to do is I want to give you a little bit of my time right now. I want to find out what was the reason you bought it in the first place and see if I can give you some advice, some things that you can use in your daily life that can help alleviate some of these things. Why was it you bought it in the first place? And then boom, again, I'm controlling the conversation. I'm asking the questions, and I'm building that rapport. You know, when bad guy's got a gun to my face, I don't want to be building rapport with him, but at the same time, I can show some empathy. I can say, hey, I know that maybe things are kind of difficult right now, and things will get even more difficult if some of these kids get hurt. So let's just talk about this for a second. You know, what's going on? What's going on at home? What's going on in your life? And again, is coming with that linebacker who's got the gun, right? You're coming on that side of the line of scrimmage and talking through it. So on the phone, we would tell these people who had anxiety, we say, listen, we've got, tell me more about what's going on. How were you feeling? What was it that motivated you to call in the first place? And once I've walked far enough, go in that direction with them, then I can slowly but surely turn them and say, well, let me tell you about some of the things that are in that program right now that can help alleviate that. And then once I've done that, then I can finalize it by saying, is the real reason you're returning it the money? Yeah, it is. Why don't we do a longer payment plan? Why don't we discount it, whatever else? But by the time we do that, we're already building that relationship with them, that trust with them. We're helping them feel comfortable. You know, I tell people that your step one is building that relationship of trust, as you said, with the kids or even with the bad guy, you know, saying, hey, there's got to be common ground somewhere. Both of us put our underwear and our pants on this morning. Both of us took a piss or crap when we woke up in the morning, right? Both of us have a heart. Both of us have got a mother. You know, there's common ground there somewhere. Why don't we talk about it and work through it to de-escalate it so that I don't have to take that gun away from you and bash your head in with it and put you on the ground and all this other crap, you know, which I can do. I'm not going to tell him that, but I don't want to get to that point. It's better to figure out how to de-escalate it and come to a point where you can have a calm resolution rather than coming to fists.
Great. And like you said, you know, taking it out of the context of self-defense and putting it into proactive measures, using it as a proactive measure at home with the kids or at work, you know.
So why don't we talk a little bit about what are the different parts of the attack cycle? You know, we talked about how they have to make the decision, and then it escalates, and finally it's to a point where they're actually in that attack mode.
Exactly. So the attack cycle is 5 steps, and the best analogy I can make is, going to the Serengeti, where the lion is hungry and they don't have TV dinners in the Serengeti, so they got to look for their own food. So step 1, look. They got to look for food. Then the next step is they may find a couple of critters and they got to choose which one is going to be their lunch. So look, choose. The next one is stalking. Stalking is a two-part process. You have to verify, is this the best target? Is that the best possible prey? And then how do I get to them from where I am now? So that's stalking. The next step up after you stalk is to close in such a way that you're not going to be noticed or to cause an alert. And then the last one, of course, is the attack. So you have look, choose, verify and plan, which is stalking, close in, and attack. Those 5 steps are the cycle of any attack in any scenario where there would be a prey and a predator.
And again, 4 of those 5 are before any harm comes to, myself, my family, my kids, etc. So it's that situational awareness and saying, okay, is there anything I can do to not be the person that predator chooses in that space? What can I do to ensure that I'm not in a space where they can close that distance as easily? How can I prevent that 1 through 4 before it ever gets to the attack side?
Exactly. That is the definition of proactive. Solve the problem before you need to be reactive.
I want to talk about fear. Conquering fear. Why that's important. It's been said many times that fear is the false evidence appearing real. I think that in our minds, we blow things up bigger than they really are. The reality is there's a place for it. There's a place for not being that person on the airplane that's just still doing their, when the wing's on fire, right? It's not focusing on their phone, whatever else. So there is a place for being aware, feeling that those feelings, and then being able to do something about it. So talk to me about what you teach in Conquering Fear. What does that look like?
Sure. So we've all heard the term frozen with fear, right? Most folks think, well, if something really, really bad happened, I don't want to freeze and I don't want to, incapacitate myself, right? So fear is an emotion like all the others. And there are several methods that are available to manage fear, both proactively and reactively. So let's go reactively first. So something really bad happens and you find yourself slowing down because your brain's trying to catch up with everything and you may be frozen. There's a couple of ways to break that. One of them is, been around for thousands of years, is just to take a deep breath through your nose, let it out of your mouth. You see the athletes do this, super high level, elite professional athletes before an event. Yeah, this has been around in yoga for a couple of thousand years. And that fresh cleansing breath resets everything in your body and allows you to move forward. That's one. Another is to make light or make a little mini joke out of your scenario. I mean, nowhere in the manual does it says you have to be serious about it, right? So make it funny, make a joke about it. And that what that does is it decreases the tension as well. So those are 2 reactive measures.
It's kind of like when Jimmy said when that building, when they locked the door behind us, 1 of 2 things are going to happen. We're going to get the shit beat out of us, or, they're going to bring down some trafficked children. And, and it was breaking up the tension of the fact that we just got locked in this brick building with traffickers. So
a very scary situation, intense situation, and that intensity is alleviated with a little humor.
English. Yeah, the humor is we're going to get the shit beat out of us. It'll be a story we can tell our grandkids.
Those are reactive. Those are the reactive measures. Proactively, let's say, I'm just making this up, you have a fear of heights or something like that. And you can visualize, cognitive visualization, you're familiar, and you see yourself, really put yourself in the situation. You're on the edge of a cliff or a building or something like that, or a very high step, and you're looking down, and you should feel your palms sweating and get that feeling when you look down, like nausea in your stomach. Try and put yourself into that, visualize yourself as clearly as you possibly can. And then it's just like telling a joke. So if someone tells you the joke about these three guys who walked into a bar, the first time you're laughing and your belly laugh. The second time it's kind of a chuckle. The third time you're like, oh yeah, I'm done with this joke. That's how this works. It desensitizes you. And by playing that scenario in your head again and again, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 times, whatever it takes, it desensitizes you to it. And there's no charge or energy or whatever you want to call it on that specific fear. Now, if you got a fear of heights and a fear of open spaces and a fear of speaking and all this other stuff, you got some work ahead. At least take one topic, work on that, and that's a proactive method, or that's a proactive measure for managing fear.
And I think that this is such an important topic for life as a whole. You know, we see so many people that live a life of mediocrity, that are never pursuing their dreams because they're afraid. The reality is the only fears that we're born with is the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling, right? Those are the only ones. Everything else is a learned fear. You know, you learn how to be afraid of what people say when you're speaking in public. You learn how to be afraid of, some stupid person in a car. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And when we live our life in fear, when we live our life in a place where we're locked down, we're never going to progress. We're never going to grow. And in a life or death situation like that, it's a big negative. It's something where if the things that you're going to do is you're going to either freeze or flee or fight, and the freeze thing, you're gonna be a victim of victims, right? You're gonna be the person that's gonna get robbed, get raped, get killed, everything else. So you've got to be willing to either flee if you can, which is the best option. We talked about this in one of our other trainings. How you called it the Nike move. The heels
turn heels towards threat
and heels, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't matter how much training you've had. I don't care if you're a quadruple black belt in every martial arts out there. If you can remove yourself from the situation, that is absolutely a win every time. Every time, that's a win when it comes to fighting and whatever. So that's what we've been talking about on all of these programs, is what you can do to ensure you're never having to deal with the fight. But if you are in that situation, now you have to, instead of freeze, and you can't flee, you've got to be willing to fight. And being willing to do that is overcoming that fear. You've got to. In fact, I had a license plate cover on my car many years ago. This is back in my early 20s when I was building my companies, and I was scared. I was scared to death of making the phone calls. I was scared to death of talking about. I was scared to death of rejection, all of this stuff. And finally, I realized that the only way I was going to become successful at those things is if I figured out how to overcome that fear. And I developed a love for feeling that fear and doing it anyway. And I actually had on my license plate cover, feel the fear and do it anyway, right? And my license plate itself said no excuses, NOXQSES, right? No excuses, feel the fear and do it anyway, because we're all going to feel that fear. It's not something that I'm not scared of anything. You're probably psychotic if you have zero fear. We're all going to be dealing with some of that fear in the first place. But if we live life in that fear space, I think of it as a rut. We're in the bottom of this rut, and homework. We're never changing. We're never getting out of our comfort zone. We don't want to start that new company. We don't want to talk to that new potential girlfriend. We don't want, whatever it is. We're stuck in this hole because getting out of it's uncomfortable, right? Feeling that fear, facing that fear is uncomfortable. However, the only way you're going to get out of that rut, the only way is by facing that fear. And once you pull out of it, then you progress. You go back in your life and you look at every time that you've been the happiest. The happiest times in your life is when you're progressing in some way. You're progressing, you're getting in better shape, you're increasing your income, you have a good relationship that you're building. Somewhere you're progressing. But you have to realize that progression comes with choosing to face those fears and get out of that comfort zone to be able to progress and live a healthier life. And so this is something that, I could do an entire podcast on just fear itself, and doing the undercover work and realizing that fear and faith cannot exist in the same person at the same time. In reality, it's because in a way they're the same power. People that believe bad things happen actually attract that. People who believe good things, faith, actually attracts that into their life. And that's a whole podcast as well, just on that energetic connection with the universe, our world around us, and how fear attracts negativity and faith attracts that positivity, and what things we can do to overcome those fears to live a healthy life.
Exactly. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it does apply. Who gets the power? Are you going to empower fear, or are you going to empower yourself? It goes back to that responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility for myself, or I lay that responsibility on my fear. It's a decision. It's a choice.
Let's talk just briefly. This one's going to be a short podcast because we've got to get you to the airport. So let's talk briefly on what I call Operation. Well, actually, you were the one that called it Operation Red Pill. Red Pill is one of my favorite things to say, and this shouldn't be a right-wing, left-wing issue. This is off of the movie The Matrix. Hopefully, you guys saw that movie. The Matrix, when he's presented, hey, you know what? You can take the blue pill and you can live in La La Land and never know the truth, or you can take the red pill and I can show you how deep the rabbit hole goes, right? The red pill is about the truth. The red pill is about, being aware and of your surroundings, of the world, of everything else. So talk to me just briefly, because we're going to go a lot of things in the future on what you call Operation Red Pill.
Sure. Yeah, take the blue pill, wake up in the morning, believe whatever you want.
Exactly.
And so it's about the awareness piece. You don't know what you don't know. And levels of awareness are, we as humans, all of us are aware at some level. You could be, comatose, but you still have to be aware. Your heart has to beat. There is some minimal awareness thing going on there. As you move up the awareness chain, we talked about condition white, which is just you're at home. You're not worried about anything. You've got your alarms on. You're with your family. It's a nice neighborhood, stuff like that. So you're next level up though from down here. And then you see people in the street with their cell phones. They're not at home, so they should have a little bit higher level of awareness, but they're walking into walls and stepping into pools of water and things like that, because that, even though there is some awareness, the awareness is very limited, and as you go up from there, you apply condition yellow. We were talking about being aware, general awareness, again, not hyper aware, but general awareness, until maybe something happens that gets your attention. Now you're focused on, when I was training in Japan, there's a martial arts term called zanshin, and that is you're acutely aware of something, which is several levels above what we were talking about earlier. And then, you look at the elite athletes. You can go up from there in levels of human awareness. You look at the elite athletes, a professional golfer, or a professional basketball player, professional baseball player, their game, they're at such a level of heightened awareness. Again, another Japanese term, mushin, which is the state of no mind, where they're able to focus so well because their clarity, their awareness is at such a height that to the golfer, that hole looks like the size of the Grand Canyon. The baseball player sees the red stitching on the ball in super slow motion, even though the ball's going 90-something miles an hour. Basketball player looks at that hoop, it's the size of his house. So being in the zone is one of the highest levels of awareness we can have as humans. So you can see the gamut there from barely functional to elite professional athlete. It's quite a range.
Well, and that's what, if our goal in life is progression versus stagnation or stepping back. In fact, I really believe that that's the biggest purpose of everything. It's this progression of the universe. It's progression of consciousness. It's our growth and progression in each area of our life. You look back at when, even not just personal progression, but helping other people progress. You're helping your child take her first step, or, your little boy hit his first ball or catch it, whatever else. That progression is something that innately for the entire history of our spiritual being has been something that has created joy. And I think that we were made that way because of the fact that everything is tied to this progression. So if indeed progression is the name of the game, That's what we want to do. We want to have a healthier relationships. We want to have healthier family. We want to have more money. We want to be in better shape. We want to have a better connection with God. All of these things are all tied to progression. Then we need to ask ourselves what helps create that progression. And I believe that, especially in our conversation today and some of our other ones, that you and I share in that understanding that awareness is one of the fundamental keys to progression. You can't, they say pigs don't know pigs stink, right? And I don't know what I need to fix until I can be aware of it. And so open up our minds, open up our ears, open up our hearts, and tune in to the world around us, tune in to what it is that we need to change. That's the way that we progress. In fact, our healing retreats, I won't go into depth on that, but one of the biggest things that we focus on these fully immersive, transformational experiences is helping people become very, very aware of the things in their lives that are holding them back, the things in their lives that are not in line with their higher self, the things in their lives that need to be released from their childhood, from their past, things that happened to them, things that they did. It's irrelevant. Both of them require some work and some faith to overcome, but being aware of all of those things is step one in being able to progress and move forward. So we're about done. Any other final words that you want to share with the audience today?
I'm in complete agreement with you. I think it's something we all share as humans. Every one of us has that awareness. I call it the spark. And once you ignite that spark, it can only get brighter.
It can. In fact, I have another book I'm working on after the Sound of Freedom is out. And the next one is, I've got a business book coming out, but I have one called Are You Listening? With my hand on my heart. Not here, my ear, but here on my heart. Why? Because there's only a certain amount of things that we can hear here, and our eyes can deceive us, our ears can deceive us, but that spark, that divine light of truth that every one of us have, that will never deceive us. And so being super aware of that, aware of our surroundings, aware of how we're impacting the lives of others, aware of how we see humanity as a whole. These are all keys to moving forward. If we're going to eradicate child trafficking, we need to not just fight that fire with fire. We need to take a few steps back, become very aware of the actions that I am contributing to the world that are contributing to that negativity. And people will say, I would never, ever hurt a child. You're right. Most of us never would. However, we have to be aware of the things that we're doing that contribute to us. Maybe this guy at your work, maybe you're a boss, you've got a bunch of guys, you've got an employee there. Maybe this guy had a really, really difficult childhood. He was abused himself. He's been addicted to pornography. His wife just left him because of his addiction. I mean, all this crap going on, and he's progressed. He's made really bad choices in his life that have progressed him to the point where he's wants to take his anger out on somebody, whether that's another adult, whether that's a child, and he's on the edge of that cliff. And you, through your actions, are not being aware of those things, and you are being toxic in how you're communicating with him, pushing him over the edge. In reality, every one of us, through that trauma transfer, are that ripple effect, are affecting people, other people, and maybe even children. And so being aware of those things, us progressing as individuals, us growing through all of our issues, that toxicity in our life, liberating ourselves from anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, and being super aware of how our actions and our words are affecting the world around us, I believe will save millions of children. So thank you. Thank you, Steve, for flying in. Thank you for spending time. Super, super grateful for you. Grateful for your friendship, for your support, and I'm grateful for the last 40 years of you serving, of giving back. There are so many people whose lives are better, who are safe, who are alive today because of the 50,000 plus people who have been through your training, top level, tip of the umbrella people, and hopefully now people can go you can go to liberatinghumanity.com and get some more information on Steve Tarani, on the Prefense course, on tools, free tools that you can use, and paid programs that you can use as well. You can go on there. You can type in Liberate 20, capital L, Liberate 20 when you're checking out with the Prefense course, and get 20% discount. And just get some tools, whether it's Steve's, whether it's other things that are on the site, whether it's just people in your neighborhood you can go do some training with. Get aware. Improve that 6 inches between your ears, which is the most valuable piece of real estate you'll ever own. Develop that. Keep your kids safe. Keep you safe. Find ways to be aware of everything so that you can live the best life possible. Thank you for joining me today on the Liberating Humanity podcast. I'm Paul Hutchinson, and I'm so honored to have Steve Tarani here with me. Please please share this with other people, and let me know more of the things that you want to hear about and learn to keep your family safe.